Hey, Rand, you ever think about the fact that walking on paths is kind of like neuroscience?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like pathways in our brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And the more finished the path, the more solid the pathway is in our brain.
Yeah, the easier it is to take the path, right? If I'm walking up this path right here,
Super easy.
it's pretty easy. I can get up and down this path pretty easy because it's so well worn.
You don't even have to think about it.
No.
These represent like the habits we have in life. Like they're just easy.
Yeah, they're just easy. It's easy to follow a path that's laid out for you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what if I want to get way over there and there really isn't a path for us to take? Like, I don't have that nice, well-worn path like we did back there. Then what do we do?
Well, we got to create a new path. And
Okay.
that's a lot like your brain. Whenever you're trying to put a new habit in place,
Yeah.
or change your behavior, you have to create a new pathway for your brain to operate that new behavior.
Well, this kind of sucks because I'm kind of like trying to get through this path here and I keep getting hit in the face by sticks and
It's a little prickly.
yeah, I got to step over all this stuff here and
It's not easy. It's going to be challenging.
makes me feel like I don't even want to go this way.
Wouldn't it just be easier to go back to the other path?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. If I want to create a new habit, I'm going to have to do things like just keep kind of like taking this path. Oh, I almost stepped on a frog there. I just got to keep taking this path. And the more I take this path, the more I feel like eventually this path will become easier and easier to take. What do you think about that?
Well, you're going to have to be super disciplined.
Yeah.
You're going to have to keep working at it. Eventually it gets easier, you're
Yeah.
right. But there's always going to be this desire to go back to the paved path because it's just so much easier. It
Yeah.
takes less work. You don't have to think about it.
Watch out for this thing here. Ah, jeez. Okay. Yeah, so I guess the bottom line is that if you just keep taking a path enough, eventually you'll wear a path down so that it looks maybe something like this. Like maybe, people have come this way here often enough that it actually becomes it's pretty easy to take this path. You and I could just walk on this path right now. In fact,
Yeah.
maybe we should. I'm kind of getting tired of this.
Well, and now this makes that habit a little easier, right? Because it's easier to navigate.
Yeah.
You can see it. You don't have to think so much about it. It's not such hard work. And now the new habit starts to get laid down. So that's a lot like what's going on in your brain.
Yeah, you create new pathways. Well, that was an interesting walk in the woods.
That was fantastic.
think-
we need a little break anyway.
We did need a break, and also I think it's a great metaphor for how our brains work.
Yeah.
The more you do something, they actually show this like scientifically. They can kind of show that the more you do a very specific thing with intention, the more it kind of moves into that part of your brain that's more responsible for just habits.
Yeah, so your neural pathways in your brain become stronger and stronger the more you do something. Mm-hmm. So our habits have strong neural pathways.
Yeah.
And if we want to get rid of a habit or change a habit or bring a new habit, we need to build a new neural pathway and then keep yourself from going back to the old neural path, back to the old habit.
Yeah, because that old pathway might still be a lot easier to take, at least initially for a little while.
Right, so it'll take us a while to kind of reprogram our brain, so we'll use the new pathways, and that's really common for everybody.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like even on our little walk in the woods, it really wouldn't be that uncommon for a path like the one that you see on the screen here to eventually it would grow over, right?
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't be able to go that way. If you just stop going that way, eventually it'll grow over and it'll just kind of disappear. It won't even look like a path and your brain won't know any better.
So your brain kind of prunes those old pathways and then uses them for new things and gets rid of them.
Yeah.
So that's why after a while, like it would be hard to go back to an old habit because that pathway wouldn't exist anymore, but it would take some time to do that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, just like if you're out in the woods and you want to get to a new destination, well, then you have to take a new route, right? Yeah. And in the same way, just like if you want to get to a new destiny in life, then that means you got to start building new routines. See how routes, routines, destiny, destination.
Oh, I love that.
I think there's something there. I don't know what, but I think somebody thought that through.
That's good stuff. Yeah. So, Pete, part of the journey to becoming an unstoppable leader is really making sure we have a blueprint for success in place for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that that's really key because our action, we talked all about this before, how your thoughts, determine your actions become your habits become your destiny.
Yeah.
And so really what this whole section, this whole module is about your behaviors becoming your behaviors become your habits, and your habits will become your destiny. So what this is all about is about setting up your behaviors in a way that leads you to where you want to go, rather than just randomly landing you in some place.
So where does that start? Where do we even begin with that?
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I got this theory. You tell me what you think about this theory. It might be totally wrong, but just tell me what you think about this.
I'll tell you.
I think that ultimately, if you're really going to change your behavior, you have to decide what you want to change it to.
Sure.
We
desired state.
A desired state. Yeah, exactly. Okay. We have our current state. We have a desired state, right? And so we use a lot of words for that. I think the easiest word that most people kind of think of is the word goal. And so that's the G in this GPA, rah, rah, rah.
Sounds like a cheer.
Exactly.
All right, so what's the P for?
Okay, so really if you think about it, this is kind of the way that we run our lives, right? We have a goal, we have something in mind that we want to do, and then we create a plan. That's the P. And sometimes that plan is super elaborate. We got to have it written out, maybe make a spreadsheet or two.
Right. And
sometimes the plan is very simple. Like sometimes my goal is I need a drink of water. So my plan
You're not going to write a plan for
No,
that.
I'm not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are probably some people who would, but sometimes when something's simple, it's just a simple spoken or really just maybe like a visualized plan.
So then tell me about the A.
Well, the A is the most obvious. That's act. Right? Like if you don't ever act, how are you ever going to get to where you want to be?
Execute the plan. Yeah. And then the rah, rah, rah.
Okay, well that's just you cheering for each other. No, that's not it. Okay. What it really is like if you think about it, well, what it stands for is reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust.
Keep doing that over and over and over.
That's a pretty good thing because if you think about it, like maybe you have a goal and maybe you even have a plan. And maybe you start taking action, but you realize that your action isn't really getting you any closer to your desired state. Right?
So the rah, rah, rah is like a feedback loop.
Exactly. You got to take a look, scan your environment, right?
Tells you if you're on track.
Yeah. Are you on track? Are you getting closer to where you want to go? Or are you getting further away? Or are you like 1 degree off course?
Oh, I like that. So for a blueprint for success, it's GPA, rah, rah, rah. Well, that's easy to remember.
Reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust.
Love it.
So it's pretty simple, but you and I both know that's not exactly how life is, right?
Well, I always envision it, honestly, like I'm here, I'm at my current state, and I want to get to here. Yeah. And it's like, in my head, that is a straight line.
Yeah. Well,
it's a straight path, and I just have to do it.
That's how you envision it, but let me just ask you, how often does it work out that way?
Well, it never works out that way, but it's just still how I think about it. I'm very linear like that.
Yeah, we like to believe that, I like to believe anyway, I don't know if this is true of everybody, but I like to believe that, hey, look, this is where I am today, this is my point A, and I want to be to point B. So why can't I just go from point A to point B? But sometimes I think about that like, okay, well, what if I wanted to go to Orlando, Florida, right? And here we are we're somewhere near Minneapolis, Minnesota. So for what that would mean for us is that if we just went that way, that's southeast, right? If we just went that way, eventually we'd get to Orlando, Florida, right? But, it wouldn't take us too long. We're
not flying.
Well, we're not flying.
We're driving.
Right? Driving or walking or however we're getting there.
This?
Well, I wasn't actually going to do that. This is just like a metaphor. But if you think about it, it wouldn't take me too long and I would run into the Mississippi River.
Ure.
Well, then what are you going to do? Well, now you got to go find a bridge, right?
Got to go around.
Yeah. And then, then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to run into, some big city and it's a lot of traffic. So you got to go around that traffic. And then maybe there's some road construction. So maybe you decide to go around that road construction.
Lots of obstacles, lots of hurdles to overcome on their way to that destination.
Yeah. And so really what you have to do, even though you have this desired state, you have this desired outcome, you and I both know that we're going to run into things along the way. And experience tells us that we're going to have to make adjustments as we go.
I like the arrows that go backwards.
Yeah.
Like you went down a dead-end street and you're like, I can't get down there that way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to go back.
I got to go back. Sometimes you do have to go back. And you know what? I think you and I both know that, and well, this is my own experience, maybe not yours so much, but sometimes I do start down a pathway and I realize this is just too hard. I don't want to go this way. I got to, I'm just going to retreat and just kind of give up.
It's actually funny that you just said that, because I was thinking about how easy it would be to get frustrated along this path, especially the more detours you have. The more times you have to go backwards, it could be easy to just say, you know what, cutting a new path is too hard. I just want to return back to where it was easier.
Yeah, for some reason it sounded like a good idea at the time. David Goggins says, everything sounds like a good idea when you're sitting on a comfortable couch. Right. Right?
He's the runner, right?
Yeah, he's he's like an ultra marathoner, right? Or Mike Tyson says, he says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Or something
Everything
like that.
Changes.
I might be paraphrasing Mike, and I don't want to misquote Mike because I feel like that could be dangerous. But the bottom line is, like, you think you have a plan, you think you know how things are going, but ultimately you're going to bump into things. And, sometimes it might just be too hard. And you just say, this is not, either I need to find a different route, or you kind of realize this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and I'm just going to bail.
So let's figure out how to set a blueprint for success, because we know that the path is messy.
Yeah. Okay, so let's break this whole GPA rah thing down into like digestible bits here. So let's start by talking about goals.
Yeah, and we know that there was this great piece of research done at Dominican University, and they really looked at what makes goals actually happen. Like, what are the things that they do that help them be achievable?
Got it.
And one of the first things we learned is that when you write goals down, they're instantly more achievable.
Yeah, if you look at the bars on this graph, you look at the first bar compared to the second bar. First bar, that's like not writing your goals down. Second bar, that's writing your goals down.
Yeah, and then not only that, but if you write your goals down and then you communicate those goals to another person, a trusted person, that the chances of you achieving those goals continues to go up.
Yeah, actually on this graph, that's the fourth bar compared to the third bar there. Group 4 compared to Group 3.
And then there's one more hack, and that is to send regular updates and get feedback from that other person. So you're saying, here's the progress I'm making, and you use them as a feedback mechanism.
You got a built-in rah. Reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust, reflect, adjust. I like it.
So they found you do those three things, and your goals become much more achievable.
Okay, so write them down, tell a friend, and check in with that friend every once in a while.
Exactly.
Perfect. Love it.
So if you are trying to achieve goals, it's really helpful to kind of like reverse engineer from your goal backwards to what you would do this quarter, this month, this week, today.
Okay, so if I kind of know how I want things to be in 5 years, we'll call that my future desired state.
5 years is a long time.
It is. That's like good luck making a goal with all the things going on in the world today. Good luck. But I mean, there are certainly some things that you could do. Like if I said, hey, I want my body to look a certain way in 5 years, or I want to have this going on in my life in 5 years.
I'm going to lose 5 pounds in 5 years.
Okay, 1 pound a year. I feel like I can do that.
That's achievable.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely achievable. Okay, so
reverse engineer your goals and think about, what do I need to do today?
Okay.
What do I need to do tomorrow? Okay. And it's really those actions you're doing on a daily basis that are going to add up over time. They're going to compound over time. And that is stacking your wins one day at a time.
So by reverse engineer, you mean look at what I want 5 years from now and then say to myself, okay, well, what do I need to do this quarter?
Right.
Right. And then once I know what I need to do this quarter, I say, okay, if I need to do this in the next 3 months, what do I need to do this month? And then if I know what I need to do this month, then I can think about what I need to do this week.
Exactly.
And if I know what I need to do this week, then that tells me what I got to get done today.
And that helps you stay focused so that you're going to be much more likely to achieve the goal. So you're going to reverse engineer your goal.
Yeah, you're going to end up where you want to end up.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about some elements of a good goal, a goal that's highly likely that we're going to achieve. Maybe a slightly shorter term goal, maybe a longer term goal, but let's talk about some elements of some good goals. One of the frameworks I've seen for this is called SMART goals. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, because we want to be really smart when we're setting our goals, right? So specific.
Yeah. So when we say specific, this is how I think about it. Can I picture it? Like, is it something that I can, in my mind, I can create a picture of? So it's something like, well, I want to lose, 20 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So I can, in my imagination, I can tell you what that
Very
is.
specific. How about measurable?
Well, measurable, a lot of times, most of the time, has something to do with a metric, meaning something to do with a number. I want to lose 5 pounds, whatever.
Achievable.
Achievable, it kind of means, it sort of means like realistic.
Yeah.
So achievable, like I wouldn't say I want to lose 50 pounds tomorrow, right?
I have set many goals that are not achievable
Right.
or not realistic.
Yeah.
Only realizing later that was a crazy goal. Like that was never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean but that's kind of what we do. Like our brains
Yeah.
kind of work that way. Like we get ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. And there's sometimes, maybe there's times when you want to really be ambitious, but in reality, like I think you're more likely, according to like a lot of research, especially the James Clear research that we're going to get to later, it's probably better if you're really interested in reaching those goals is to kind of go one step at a time.
So let's make it relevant.
Yeah, relevant means it's tied to your ultimate goal, right? Like, think about it this way. If you said to yourself, well, I want to get a really big, muscular chest, right? And you say, that's my goal. Well, then you say, okay, since I want a really big muscular chest, I'm going to run 5 miles a day for the next 6 months, right?
Probably not going to work.
No, I mean, it's a good
relevant,
goal. It's
right?
not relevant. It's a good goal. It's a good health goal. It'll make you healthier and all that other stuff. But it's not relevant to getting a big chest.
Yeah, and then time bound, the last element.
Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Like, put a time on it. Put a little pressure on yourself. By putting a time limit on it, you put a little pressure on yourself. And I don't know about you, but like sometimes I act a lot.
procrastinating then.
Yeah, you can't procrastinate. You feel like you can. So I heard you say like you've set goals in the past and maybe you didn't reach them. And I can't imagine that you're the only one in the world that has had that happen.
I hope not.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the reasons why that happens for people.
Sure. Okay. So these are kind of like the arrows that are pointing in all those different directions
Exactly.
when we're looking at where our current path is and our desired path. So if you're not clear about where you're headed, you're not going to get there, right? You got to have clarity.
Crystal clear.
Sometimes we have a fear of failure.
Yeah, if you don't take action, why are you not taking action?
You're afraid to take that next step.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to hold you back.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just putting off the step or putting off the start. You can't get out of bed at that certain time. Whatever it is, you're procrastinating.
You just I'll get to it later. I got plenty of time.
Right. Maybe another one is it's really hard to have the discipline to do this every day, and so maybe we lack a little persistence.
Yeah. So we can't get into a rhythm, something like that. Yeah, good.
We have a hurdle of not having enough planning or not really putting the plan together.
Well, that's why there's the P in the GPA, right? You actually have to think through a little bit. What is likely to get me to where I want to go?
Maybe a little negative self-talk going on in our brains.
We put together a whole class on that one. If you still got negative self-talk going on, you got to back up a little bit in this.
You had to get the worm out.
Yeah, get the worm out. What else?
We get
what else
distracted. Happens? It's hard to stay focused. There's so many distractions.
Well,
we
that's
got too
life.
much on our plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Which
you and I both
often
know.
happens.
Like
right?
Speaking of plate, like it's almost dinner time. Like I want to get to dinner. Like
You're a little distracted.
Yeah,
right now.
exactly.
Poor time management.
Yeah.
We're just not really laying out enough time to get the different steps done.
Yeah, we got to block out time for this or that. That's probably a good piece of advice no matter what. What else?
Or you don't do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and you're not really accountable to that.
Well, yeah, if you go back to that study, like that was one of the things that make it so that people are very likely to reach their goals is, writing them down, that's one thing, but actually talking to somebody about it, that kind of holds you accountable, especially if you're checking in with them every so often.
If you have an accountability partner, that helps immensely.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That's a good idea.
And then maybe you just don't have enough support for the goal that you have put in place.
Yeah.
And so you need some more support.
Yeah, and that might mean reaching out to some people. That might mean finding some coaching, stuff like that. That's kind of some of the stuff that we do. And, you can always go to liftteams.com and go to the contact page, find us, and we'll kind of coach you through some of that stuff. Okay, so I feel like we talked about goals, and, we kind of know a little bit about goals. And I think a lot of us kind of know a lot about goals anyway. But let's talk about plans a little bit. What are some elements of a good, effective plan that's very likely to bring you to your desired outcome?
Yeah, so it's really important that, first of all, your actions are tied to your SMART goal, right? You want everything synced up.
Yeah, you got to be have the end in mind. Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind.
Right. And then you want to make sure that what you're doing has a high likelihood of success.
Yeah, okay, well, how do you do that?
Well, it's either going to be based on your experiences. The actions that you choose will be based on your experiences, or if it's something new, then it might be based on research.
Yeah, if you haven't had enough experience, then you better start digging into it a little
Right.
bit.
What do other people say about
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Okay, so let's say that I have a plan now. If it's something simple,
You're not writing it out. You're probably just visualizing it.
yeah.
And the more complex your plan is, the more steps you're going to want to do here. Like,
Okay.
you want to talk to others about it.
Okay, so that would be a spoken plan.
Right. You want to write it down,
Okay, that'd be a
get it
written
on
plan,
paper,
sure.
get it on your computer, and then share it with other people.
Okay.
Share
Yeah,
it with teammates, share it with friends, trusted colleagues, whoever.
Yeah, and again, if you share it with people, then they can check in with you every once in a while.
Right.
You can
So
check in with each other.
You're going back to the previous comments about this, you're increasing the accountability
Yeah.
for it. And then lastly, you're going to have some key indicators of progress along the journey.
Kips.
We'll call them milestones or
Okay.
kips,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And then they give you feedback that you're on the pathway or you're on a trajectory that's going to get you to your destination.
Yeah, and they'll actually give you something to talk to people about too, if you're
Right.
if you're in that, if that's kind of your mode of going.
So when
through
they
it.
check in, say, hey, how are you doing on that goal?
Yeah.
Then you can share your latest milestone progress moment with them.
Sure.
So there's an interesting thing that happens, Pete, when we have certain actions,
Yeah.
we'll call them action A,
Sure.
that leads to outcome 1.
Sure.
But what if you want a different outcome?
Yeah, so I can't do, if I do action, so if I want outcome 2, if I want a different outcome, I can't continue to do action A. Like especially if action A is like a habit,
Right.
I got to change that habit.
Right, because action A was designed to get you outcome 1.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't even be reasonable to think action A is going to lead to outcome 2.
Yeah, that would be like taking a road to some place and it always takes you there, right? And then deciding I'm going to try to take that same road and get somewhere else.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't
so this is about changing your habits,
Okay.
your behavior. So if your habits were action A,
Yeah.
then your new habits will be action B.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you change habits.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough thing. So, if you think about it, it really comes down to the habit loop.
So tell me about the habit loop.
Yeah,
So
so-
we got this word here, cue.
Yeah, so what we mean when we say cue is like something in the environment
Okay.
is causing your body, like your nervous system, is causing your body to feel a certain way. It's like it's giving you almost like a craving. Like if you smell some good food,
yeah.
it gives you a craving to eat that food.
So like a stimulus in your environment.
Yeah, exactly. Now you don't necessarily have to eat that food just because it's there, just because you're craving it. But a lot of times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I give into that stuff.
Well, what do you mean by craving then?
Well, just something, it's like an internal feeling that's saying, this is the routine that you should run. It's like kind of like urging you to run a specific routine.
Okay, and then we respond.
Yeah, we respond. And a lot of times, sometimes we respond in ways that are consistent with our survival. So in other words, we see a nice looking meal there and that's the cue. And we respond to that by salivating a little bit and we go over and eat it. And then our body gives us a little reward, right?
Okay.
And that's like a little dopamine hit. And so the next time we get that cue, our body is going to crave that reward again.
So we just keep running this loop or running this cycle, and that's how habits get built,
Yeah,
essentially.
But what if you want to change your habit?
Ooh, that's a great question. And that is why you should read Atomic Habits by James Clear,
Yeah.
where he really digs into how habits are constructed and how you change habits. He's got a lot of resources. And when you're on the journey to being an unstoppable leader, you really need to understand the habit loop.
Yeah, you got to change your habits. And that's actually what our framework is. So if you were going to start your stopwatch on the 15-minute framework, this would be the place to start it right here.
Here we go.
I think it might actually be easiest to just kind of start in with an example. So like if I'm thinking of an example of a habit loop and I want to create a new habit, maybe you got something in mind.
Well, my son-in-law is actually a dentist, and he had this great example of how he helps his patients learn how to floss, because a lot of times people don't floss, and you forget about it, and then you go multiple days or maybe weeks sometimes,
like
and you haven't
20
flossed.
years.
And so he used Atomic Habits to design a system for helping people learn how to floss.
Well, tell me about that. So you see, like, if I'm trying to build a good habit here, it's got 4 things there. Tell me about that. Like, how does he say you should make it obvious?
Well, go back to the cue. You have to have a cue in your environment,
Okay.
you said, right?
What's his cue? Yeah, there you go.
his cue is dental floss sticks in your car on the counter of your bathroom and on the nightstand of your bed. So the
Okay.
cues are all around you, reminding you about flossing.
Okay, well, how does he make it? How does he say this will make it attractive, or how does he make that cue attractive?
Well, it's fun to floss with these dental floss sticks because
Yeah.
they're mint flavored,
Okay.
they're tasty.
Okay.
And so it's just kind of fun to do.
Okay,
It's
well,
a good taste.
how does he make it easy? Like, where's the easy part of this?
Well,
I hate flossing, by
yeah.
the way, but I do it. But I just hate
You
it.
have lots of routines. You're in your bedroom for part of your day. You're in your bathroom for part of your day. You're in your car for part of your day. So what makes it easy is they're readily accessible
You don't have to
in
pull out the
multiple
string.
places. You don't have to
Gotcha.
find your floss
Yeah.
container and pull out that string.
Okay.
It's just easy to find.
Okay, so you make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. I guess just the feeling in your mouth makes it satisfying.
Well, it feels clean. It feels healthy.
Yeah.
You got that minty flavor. It was easy to do.
Sure.
And overall, that creates a feeling of satisfaction.
Okay.
Which then rewards that loop and makes it easy to build a habit around flossing.
Got it.
And that's how he teaches his patients to build their flossing habit.
Good, I like it. So what if we want to do something a little more related to like leadership? Not that flossing has nothing to do with leadership, but what if we want to make it a little bit more like leadership?
Well, that's a great question. And we could use this class as the example of
Okay.
the habit that we want to construct.
Perfect. I want to create the habit of doing this module, doing a module a week for, say, I don't know, the next 12 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, what a great habit to build. So how would we make that obvious?
Okay, well, I think one way you could make it obvious is you could take a Post-it note and you could just put it on your mirror, and you have it on the mirror, and it says Saturday morning, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're doing the module today. Or on your phone, you make a little phone reminder. That would make it obvious.
How about attractive? How do
Well-
we make it attractive?
Come on, look at. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe you like it. Maybe it's fun. Maybe you do actually just like to sit down in front of your computer and do stuff like this. Or maybe you like to drink like a warm cup of coffee. I mean, these modules only take 20 to 30 minutes. You get through the 20 to 30 minutes and you're done. And you've taken your coffee, and it's, that's attractive to you.
And maybe you could find 5 or 10 or 50 other people who want to do it with you.
Yeah,
would be
do
really
that. That's a good
exciting.
idea. They'll tell 10 friends. They'll tell 10 friends, and pretty soon we'll have a big community.
What a beautiful thing.
I love it.
How do you make it easy, Pete?
Well, I don't know if you can make it really that much easier than what we do, because you can do this on your phone. You can do it. The idea is you just want to lower the friction as much as you possibly can. So maybe try to remove a bunch of distractions. Maybe try to get up before the rest of your family. Maybe you got a family or something. Maybe try to get up before everybody else, but you just want to make it really easy. Maybe just sit on the couch and do it. How hard is that?
That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And make it satisfying.
Yeah, make it satisfying. I mean, like I was saying, sometimes I think you could couple it together with something that you already like to do. Like I said, maybe you do this during your coffee drinking time or something along those lines.
Well, that's a great example of creating a new habit around building your leadership capacity.
Yeah, but I do have another question. What if we want to replace what if we want to get rid of a bad habit and replace it with a good habit?
Okay, well, let's go through that. So let's go through a bad habit as a leader, and that is complaining too much when problems or challenges appear in our environment.
Yeah, I think that this is a very common problem for a lot of people. Like, how do you have and I don't know about you, but sometimes I catch myself in that little mode. Like, I'm just complaining too much. And that's something that I think leaders that are really interested in getting their group from where they are to where they want to be, they actually limit their amount of complaining. And so really, what do you do? What can you do?
Why do you think people complain
that's
as an action?
Well, that's actually a good question, because in reality, there must be some craving, right? There's got to be something when you're complaining, right? When you're doing that as a habit, you're actually probably trying to solve some problem. So like, let's just imagine that. So what's the cue? The cue is
the problem or the challenge.
There you go. Some problem or challenge comes up, and you're like, I want this problem to go away. That's the craving.
Yeah.
Right?
To be solved or to go away.
Yeah. I don't want to have to deal with this, right?
So if I complain, then it's either it becomes somebody else's issue and it went away for me, or I don't have to do any action and I can just ignore it and then it went away.
Yeah, and there's probably absolutely, but there's probably some other things too, because there might even be some things like people feel sorry for you or people feel bad for you, and that might create a little bit of a connection, which is another kind of human need. So you're going to get a little bit of a reward just from the connection. So I guess what I'm getting at there is
some empathy from other people, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess what I'm getting at is that I think it's a very complicated, like complaining and the whole whole habit loop with a behavior like complaining is a very complicated, why do we do it and all that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately what it comes back to is, can we get out of that loop?
Yeah. So we have to then flip it to a better habit.
Yeah.
Which would be like what?
Well, I've always said this, like at some point when I catch myself complaining, the way I usually catch myself, by the way, is that I've kind of repeated the same complaint, maybe to like 3 or 4 people.
You got tired of hearing yourself say it.
I get tired of hearing. It's hard to believe I would ever get tired of hearing myself. But no, I think that what happens is I kind of catch myself and I go, wait a second. I need to go on what I like to call an option hunt.
Ooh, that's good. So you're looking for options
Yeah.
to solve the problem
Yeah,
or the issue
exactly.
instead of just pushing that off onto somebody else or hoping it goes away.
Yeah,
You're looking for possible solutions.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you go on an option hunt, then you are much more likely to come up with something that is, it's not a guarantee, but it's more likely to move your team to where you want to go or closer to where you want to go. And that's going to register in your brain as a reward. You'll actually get a little dopamine hit from that.
So what was the cue that got you to think about the option hunting?
Yeah, so that's a little tricky, right? Like for me, the cue sometimes is I've repeated myself. But I think it's actually worthwhile to have what I sometimes call a secondary cue, or you got another name for it too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just call it a new cue.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
I guess
you just
that's
need
not...
to introduce a new cue,
Yeah.
make it obvious, make it attractive.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a poster of option hunting.
Yeah.
Or it's something you have written down and posted on your computer
Yeah.
so that it reminds you that if there's ever an opportunity to complain, that you're going to seek a new route.
Yep.
So a new cue.
Maybe just a sign or a poster.
Yeah, and you still have the same craving,
Yep.
but then your response to that can be different.
Yep.
But that cue initiated that new response.
Exactly. Okay, so this is our unstoppable habit guide, and I don't know if you want to kind of walk people through this a little bit.
So the first step is getting clear about what your SMART goal is.
Okay.
You're trying to start a new leadership habit. And so write a SMART goal for what that new leadership habit.
Okay, so here's an example right here. This it just says by the end of 2024, or maybe it's 2025, or I don't know what year it is when you're watching this. Maybe it's 2094. But I will complete all modules in the class on the way to Unstoppable, and I'll be at a level 9. So that would be a SMART goal.
That would be a really smart goal.
Yeah, you better get at it. Get 10 friends to do the same thing.
And then you need to really look at what are one of the behaviors.
Okay.
What is one of the behaviors that you need to change
Okay.
if you're going to have an action that's going to get you to this SMART goal?
Okay, so my habit would be then that I kind of jumped over to the third column here. So I'm going to complete a module of On the Way to Unstoppable every Saturday morning. That would be my habit that I'm trying to install.
Right, and that habit represents the action that you want to be repeating
Okay.
so that you're more likely to get to your SMART goal. And then you have to really think about, well, what is the cue that's going to open up that craving for me so that I can act on that habit and then get that reward from completing that.
Sounds really simple. I could make a Post-it note. I could put it on my calendar. I could put a reminder in my phone just to remind me that this is what I'm going to do and this is what I said I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it.
Right. So if you're starting a new leadership habit, or when you're starting a new leadership habit, right, use this table to help you figure out, what are the steps you need to go through, and make sure that it's aligned to your SMART.
Okay, and we made one too for replacing a bad habit.
Right. So it's a very similar process. If you're replacing a bad habit, we just add an additional step in there.
Yeah.
And that is to identify what is that old habit.
Yeah.
Get really crisp and clear about the habit you want to replace.
Yep.
And then identify the cue that's going to help inform the new habit so that you can execute that.
Yeah, you notice I didn't really write out a SMART goal for this one. I just said to reduce complaining. And that's probably not the best way of saying that, but you could probably put in some metrics and some ideas about how to really make that goal specific. But for the sake of this conversation, I just put in a real general goal.
Right.
So if my new habit was going to be, okay, I want to ask a question, what are the solutions? In other words, go option hunting. That would be my new habit I'm trying to install. And maybe I'd want to do something, about this one, it's called an IROD.
Yeah, it's such a great framework for making decisions. We're going to feature an entire session on just IROD in our premium class. And it really helps you make world-class decisions. It's a fantastic framework.
So we've been hinting at kind of the last step already a few times. It's really all about that reflect and adjust and reflect and adjust. And what you do is you just keep moving, right? Just keep doing things. And if you get a good habit going, right? Pay attention to whether or not that habit is getting you closer to where you want to be or further away.
Yeah, that's so important, right? You're using it as a feedback loop
Yeah.
to tell yourself whether you're on the trajectory to meet your goals.
Yeah.
And this is how you know. You're
Yeah.
reflecting, you're using your own feedback, you're using other people's feedback, and then you keep adjusting to stay on that trajectory. Okay, Pete, so take us in on a wrap up here.
Yeah, well, this is everything we went over here. You know, we started out by talking about that GPA rah, rah, rah model, which essentially is how we do anything anyway, right? It doesn't matter if it's something really complex or really simple. We're always creating goals. In our mind, maybe we're creating plans. Sometimes we got to write out the plan. We're taking action. We're paying attention to whether or not we're getting closer to our goals, and we're making adjustments along the way.
And we went through some specific steps about what makes goals effective and what makes plans effective.
Yeah, and then we talked a lot about how to build effective habits. And again, if you're unfamiliar with this, you got to read this book, Atomic Habits, and it'll kind of really give you a new perspective on how cues in our environment cause us to do certain things.
And it's really helpful to understand what's happening in your brain when you're going through leadership growth.
Yeah.
Because that is what controls us, right? And it's understanding that that's going to help you become an unstoppable leader.
Your nervous system really does control kind of what you do and who you are. And so if you want to change what you're getting out of life, you're going to have to learn to change your nervous system. But the good news is we know how to do that.
And sometimes it's really hard with laying down those new pathways. And we know that over time, the more we practice walking down those paths, the more we exercise that habit, the more it's going to become routine and we can think less about it.
Well, just like when we were out walking in the woods, right? And you're walking through the woods, you know, it's going to be a little tough at first. You might get hit in the face with a branch every once in a while. You got to step over a lot of stuff. But eventually, if you walk that path enough time, it'll become easier and easier, and you'll kind of forget about the old path.
So the key indicators of progress, they're really like your compass, right? You're navigating the world. They're your compass. They're telling you whether or not you're headed the right direction, if you're on that trajectory, if you're on that path.
Yeah, your KIPs, your key indicators of progress, that's what you're reflecting on. That's what you're monitoring. That's your rah, rah, rah in this whole thing. And if you just pay attention to whether you're getting closer to your goals or further away, then you'll be on the way to just being truly unstoppable.